Hello and welcome back to the Weather Lounge here at WeatherWorks. I'm your host, meteorologist Brad Miller. Thanks for joining us here in our own little corner of the podcast world. Here in the Weather Lounge, we discuss random weather topics with other meteorologists and guests of the show. We even add our own little personal weather experiences along with some fun facts. And joining me today, once again, here in the Weather Lounge is my colleague and co-host, meteorologist Mike Mahalik. Mike, come on down. Dun, 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 dun.
What is this? The Price is Right, Brad, or what?
Maybe. I like The Price is Right. We're quickly getting off topic here, but
It's
I
okay.
mean, The Price is Right was. I mean, that was the bomb.
Bob Barker or Drew Carey?
I'm old school. Bob Barker. Come on.
I'm with you. Yeah, I know. I'm with you.
I mean,
But I gotta say, I do like that opening though. Come on down. But man, how about the games they would play there too? What
yeah,
was
I
your
know.
favorite? How about your favorite
I
game on
mean,
that?
I'm an avid golfer. It's got to be the putting game when you're putting for, wherever from the line. You got to get whatever part of the game right to putt closer to the hole. That was always my favorite. But there was another one. But before I get to that, what was yours?
I think it was Plinko.
Plinko. But all
Yeah, I
right.
don't know. I just like dropping through those the
Yeah, that
slots
was
there
kind
and
of
then
neat, especially when I was a
trying
kid
to get the
watching that.
yeah.
But do you remember? Again, I know we're way off topic yet. We're gonna get to severe weather here in a little bit,
Yeah,
folks.
last thing.
But do you remember the hiker guy? They used to go doo 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 doo. Yeah, and he used to
Yeah.
try to. He would climb a certain number based on how far you off on a product, whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. We're way out. Let's go, Brad. We're going to talk about severe weather today. Okay, guys. This is a weather podcast.
yes, it
um.
is.
So,
But yeah,
this
it's
is
summertime. Yeah, it's summertime. Severe weather, heat. It all goes hand in hand. And I'll tell you, lightning, I would say, is the number one worry some
right.
part of any kind of thunderstorm. I mean,
Yeah.
it's something that you have to really take, cover from. It happens, and you always got to get away when there's a lightning storm coming.
Yeah. So I just wanted to start the lightning section off with a nice story from. I used to do landscaping, and before I became a meteorologist. So I was doing landscaping for years. I've been now a meteorologist for 12 years, I think, or more. Brad, I know you've been here about 5.
Yeah,
But as far as when I was landscaping and we were cutting a lot of lawns in this one neighborhood, I think there was like 10 lawns in a row we had to get done. And it was close to the end of the day. A thunderstorm was starting to bear in. And knew it even way before I got any type of warning or even saw some dark clouds because I was getting that crackling on my radio. And I don't know
oh
if you know what
yeah,
I'm
on
talking about.
ham radio. Yeah.
Yeah, I was listening to sports talk. I think it might have been Colin Cowherd, something like that, Jim Rome, something along those lines. And yeah, I kept hearing that crackling. I was like, oh, something's out there. There's got to be some lightning somewhere. And then pretty soon those clouds were rolling in. And I'll tell you what, I was on the mower in the middle of a back of a large yard. It might have been a 2-acre yard. And there was lightning cracking way too close.
Mhm. Yeah, and
For my liking.
if you could see the lightning, that's way too close. I mean, let alone if you hear the thunder, that's about when you're supposed to at least
Right.
get out of the way of the storm. But yeah, it's something
Right.
that you can't mess with because lightning can strike 5-10
Yeah.
miles even ahead of the storm.
Yeah. And I mean, with lightning, there are a lot of people who want to know well ahead of time if those
Hmm.
lightning. I mean, think of some of the clients that WeatherWorks has here, Brad. I mean, you have the stadiums, the professional teams,
Right.
sports teams. They have tons of fans in the stands, and they're looking to get them to safety if there's lightning coming in.
Right.
So, that's one thing we try to provide to some of those clients that we have is some lightning lead time. So they might have 10 or 20 minutes before there's actually a strike. We actually are trying to predict that for them.
Right.
With 30 meteorologists, we're all on that, trying to get that done.
Right, and we can't just call the client and say, "Hey, there's lightning in the area. You got to get everyone in the
Yeah,
safety in the next 10 minutes or so." No, these things, and of course, this is outside COVID time. It takes a
hmm
long time to move 60,000 fans from a stadium.
absolutely, Absolutely. I mean, you need that lead time ahead of the lightning. You can't already see the lightning by that time. It's too close.
Too
I mean,
late. Yeah.
you gotta catch that within a 10-mile radius or something like
Sure.
that. Because lightning can strike well outside of the actual storm getting to you. I mean,
Right.
you hear those talks about bolts from the blue, basically,
Hmm.
coming out of the anvil top of a storm and striking, you know, 10, 20 miles away from the storm. Yeah, lightning can be very dangerous. But going into other aspects of severe weather in the summer, I mean, let's talk about wind because that's the main thing that we have here in the Northeast, right, Brad?
Yeah, I mean, there's different types of. I mean, of course, wind is wind, but there's different types of wind that occurs during a thunderstorm, and what we mean by that is a microburst, and basically that's just a downward pulse of air that's
Hmm.
uh, usually because of the heavy rain that's associated with a thunderstorm. It
Hmm.
just pushes straight down towards the ground. That's the most dangerous for airlines and even some
Hmm.
cars and truck drivers, because again these things can cause a problem when you have a burst of air that's, once it hits the ground from the atmosphere, it has to go somewhere, and then it kind of flattens out and pushes
Yeah.
horizontally, and that really kind of becomes a straight line winds that we also deal with a lot
Hmm.
of these storms that also can bow out ahead of the storm itself. So wind damage is an issue with really any severe thunderstorm. But then you get into more of a cluster of storms, Mike, that can last a long time, and it's
Yeah.
kind of a buzzword outside even the weather industry, called the derecho.
Yeah. Yeah. It's Derecho is certainly um, a, a, a event that will last for over 250 miles.
Hmm.
It has winds of possibly over 70 miles an hour along that entire path. So while it's good thing in the fact that we can predict it a long way ahead of time because we
Right.
know it's already occurring.
Sure.
So we can get a lot of lead time, um, you know, to our clients ahead of a derecho. But it is very destructive, and I think there was the one down in Virginia and Maryland in 2012 that was very destructive. I think there was even a Phillies game, Nationals game going
Yeah,
on at that
I
time,
kind of remember that.
where that came in. I think if you look it up on YouTube, it's like for some reason they have it like DC Hurricane or something, but it's not a
Yeah, I know.
hurricane,
Well, no,
But
now mind you, now that began as a cluster of storms in the northern plains, I believe, like up towards like Minnesota
yeah, it
and
was.
Michigan, and then kind of dove southeast, and that's
Yeah.
basically what derecho is. Something that
Hmm.
stays intact as a severe, line of storms for, like you said, over 250 miles. So basically, you're going from. Can you imagine a line of storms from Minnesota all the way through eastern
Yeah.
Virginia?
Yeah, I mean that's just amazing longevity for a batch of thunderstorms.
Hmm.
But under the right conditions, it can happen.
Right.
But I gotta tell you, there's one time a derecho actually helped me.
Uh oh. That's kind of hard to believe.
I know
How
it is
how
hard to
severe?
believe,
Yeah.
but it sounds totally counterintuitive. But when I was working landscaping, yeah, I think it was back in.
Counterintuitive. Wait, I gotta break that word. That's too much
No,
for
come
me,
on,
Mike.
that's not too much.
Oh, go ahead. Continue with your counterintuitive story.
Okay. I'm sorry. But anyway, so I was working for a landscaping company. I think it was back in 1999. And we had this one large cemetery that had a ton of trees all over it. And in the fall, it would be the worst thing trying to clean up all those leaves, whether we're hauling it to the curb or hauling it off site or what we're doing or chopping them up or
Right.
how we're trying to deal with those leaves. So this derecho came through, knocked down about half the trees in the cemetery. And I
Wow.
was, yeah, I mean, I drove by it and I was like,
I mean, mainly because
wow.
of the wind, though, right?
Yeah, the wind just, yeah, blew over all these trees, and it's really made our lives a lot easier in the fall when it
Yeah,
came
I guess
around. But
so.
but although I was kind of happy for the work going down a little bit, I know these things can be destructive. I'm happy I wasn't in the cemetery. I might have joined the tombstones.
Oh, geez.
But that's too sorry. I don't mean to do
Yeah.
that.
Well, we're glad that didn't happen.
No, absolutely. Um, but um, but yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
guess it
we
must
talk
have looked
about
like winter time though, didn't it? I mean, afterwards with all the leaves off the tree.
yeah. I mean, it was really nice. I mean, I gotta say, but but the reason why we do these alerts and stuff, we do alerts for our clients about this severe weather so you guys can prepare a little bit. It's not just to get a forecast out to them and get a good
Right.
forecast to people. It's also, you know you can plan your day better, or you can have chainsaws ready if you're a tree company.
Right.
You could have extra chainsaws in case trees are going down across your area. You
Right.
can
And I was saying
schedule your day different.
schedule day, and not only that,
Yeah.
you don't have to continue to look at your radar. You don't have to continue, you know, to
No.
get an updated forecast and look on your phone and do this, and you can continue to work and wait for WeatherWorks, to actually contact you if in the event there is going to be severe weather and things like. And again, that's what we take pride in, not only in the summertime but in the wintertime with our same kind of service. But how annoying is it that you have to always check your radar and
Yeah.
look and see what the forecast is and see how much it's changed. And
Yeah.
and not only that, in the summertime, you can't go by exactly what the radar shows, because there may be a line of storms 100 miles away and like, oh, we're good for a couple of hours. But a lot of times in the heat of the day, you get
Hmm.
these pop-up storms, and they could just basically pop up on top of you, or very little warning, and they could go severe within a few minutes. Not only that, it could produce lightning, within a 10,
Hmm.
15-minute time. So you want to be ready for that. And again, that's where we come in, and that's something we take a lot of pride in as well.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want to be caught in those, and if there's any way we can help prevent that, we'll
Right.
do that.
Not not only that, now, we've talked about the wind and the lightning. Of course, the lightning is the most deadly part of a severe thunderstorm.
Hmm.
Also flooding. We'll get to that here a little bit later. But maybe not as deadly, at least here in the Northeast, but can do a lot of damage, at least property damage, and that's hail, Mike.
Yeah. Hail for sure. What's the biggest hailstone you've seen, Brad? What do you think?
See, I'm one of those people that I want to see a big hailstone in real life. Of course, I've seen pictures and videos of the Midwest when you get these real big ones, but maybe, I don't know, almost golf ball size. I can
Golf
remember
ball.
one big hailstorm, in the Poconos, late '90s,
Wow.
that took out a glass, a greenhouse. I remember seeing it
Yeah.
almost across the street. You know where I was?
Where?
Because I'm a meteorologist. I was in a open air, one of those car wash places,
Okay.
to protect my car, because I saw the storm coming and I started to see
Oh,
the
so you went
hail.
to a bay or something like that.
Yeah, I saw the
Yeah.
pea-sized hail. I'm like, oh well, it's not gonna do anything yet. But what if the storm gets worse? And this is before the time of really updated radar. Of course, I saw the storm coming, but I said,
Yeah.
you know what? I'm getting out of the way of this one, and I went and parked in one of those, open bay, car
Right.
wash places. And sure enough, there was car damage around the area.
Yeah, and you were a lot smarter than me because I remember trying to get to a storm because I was thinking that there could be some rotation with it. So I wanted to see
Oh,
if there was a potential funnel cloud or
yeah.
tornado or something going on. And I remember while you went to a bay, I was trying to get to the storm, and, and I
I was trying
ended
to
up,
protect my car.
yeah, I know. And I ended up punching the hail core uh, instead of going for safety, which is the
Yeah.
wrong thing to do, by the way. Don't do that. But I think that was about the biggest hail I've seen, but it wasn't really that large. I would say it was about nickel to quarter size. So
Okay.
again, it's the Northeast. We
Like I said,
typically don't.
that's big. Yeah, that's even big for the Northeast. Yeah.
Yeah, the Northeast is tough. You can get inch hail. I mean, you could certainly get up to 2-inch hail, but to see those big baseball, softball size type hailstorms, I mean, typically that occurs out in the
Hmm.
Midwest, maybe even in portions of eastern Colorado. It just, it's hard to get all those ingredients together for one of
Right, and
those
and even
hails.
sometimes out west, you mentioned like Colorado and some of
Hmm.
the western plains. You can get hail storms. Maybe not the big hail stones
Hmm.
themselves, but it could hail for so long that it looks like it snowed. And I've seen video, and I'm sure you have too, where they
Yeah,
actually remove the hail with snowplows, even though it's like 80 degrees
yeah.
out and after a thunderstorm.
I think earlier this year that happened in Massachusetts or New Hampshire. I can't remember what town
There may
exactly.
have been, yeah, one
I
early in
believe I
2020.
remember
Yeah,
seeing that. So it can happen here too. If you have a nice upper level low, a nice cold
sure.
pocket of air that's just kind of sitting over the area, and these thunderstorms pulse up like that, if they get
Hmm.
tall enough, certainly can produce tons of hail. And of course, if there's tons of hail, you might get a hail sale.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's again the cars. Yeah, I
You
mean
can,
it's. I was
well,
protecting my car, but yeah, what do you do when you have
yeah,
a car dealership with 200 cars on the lot?
right.
You're basically at the mercy of the weather, and if you get a hailstorm that produces big enough hailstones, you're gonna have some major damage there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't know who wants a hail damaged car like that. I know I wouldn't. But then if you're thinking about it, maybe if you're a young kid just trying to
Yeah.
get something, you know, and you get a lot cheaper of a
Yeah, I
car,
mean
it's way
the
better
engine
than a
should be
bike.
fine. It's all protected. But yeah, maybe you drive around, so you have
Yeah.
the cool hail damaged car.
Yeah, there you go. Maybe
Why are
or
your cars so
maybe
dented? Ah, I was in a hailstorm.
or maybe if you're looking for a truck for your business or something like that and you want to
Yeah,
just beat it up plowing snow to no end, maybe a nice dented in F-350 would be a good
yeah.
thing. This
You
isn't
know
a
what?
Ford commercial, by the way.
If I bought a car like that, I'd make sure I get the license plate and it said "Hail yeah" on it. But bump. All right. Enough of that. Hey, we're gonna take a break right now, Mike, and we're not done with our severe weather podcast yet. We're gonna talk about tornadoes, flooding, and the heat aspect of severe weather in summertime here in the second half of our podcast. And one other thing that we need to really talk about is watches versus warnings. So we'll have all that in our second half of the podcast here on severe weather here in the Weather Lounge right after this. Have you ever wanted to know exactly how much snow or ice fell in your backyard? Or how much snow you just plowed from that 2-acre parking lot? How about getting documentation that explains why you applied several applications of salt to a busy apartment complex? When it comes to snow and ice verification, it can be a headache trying to find accurate totals for the busy winter season. Certified Snowfall Totals from WeatherWorks provides a stress-free way to get reliable information for the exact location you need. It's your complete winter weather verification platform. For more information or to try a demo, visit CertifiedSnowfallTotals.com or call us at 908-850-8600. And welcome back, everyone, to the second half of our severe weather podcast here in the Weather Lounge. And we're going to talk about tornadoes, flooding, and the heat aspect of severe weather, which it kind of is. But before we get to that, Mike, I
Mhm.
want you to talk to the audience and maybe me about watches and warnings because
You
I
don't
mean
know?
I'm a meteorologist. I do know, of course I know, but I can understand why a lot of folks don't understand the difference, or when you hear a tornado watch, what does it mean? What does a tornado warning mean for my area? What if a tornado warning is for you know
Mhm.
20 miles from me? Does that mean I'm in the warning? So
Right.
explain a little bit the difference between the two.
Yeah, so if we're talking about tornado watches and warnings, a watch means that conditions are favorable for severe thunderstorms to develop, which could rotate and produce a tornado. It doesn't mean that thunderstorms have developed. It doesn't mean that a tornado is on the ground. Nothing like that. It just means that conditions are ripe
Right.
for those strong
So
thunderstorms to
basically,
form.
we're watching. That's kind of way
Yeah.
I like to explain to and I know you've run into this before. Relatives sometimes
Hmm.
call, we're in a
Oh,
tornado
all the
watch.
time.
Right. So basically, we're watching. We're watching for
Yes.
what could happen.
Yes, and it's over a large area too. It could be the size of a state,
Right.
and it might cover 6 hours or 7 hours.
Right. It's a
Um,
very general and almost, I don't want to say vague, but it's a more of a general area that we're kind of watching for.
right, exactly. But a warning is totally different. A warning means if we get a tornado warning, that means that a tornado has either been spotted or it's been indicated by radar. And that usually is only a lead time of maybe a half an hour,
Hmm.
maybe 45 minutes if you're
Right.
really lucky. But that means you got to take action. That means get inside, get to an interior room, get to the basement. You really have to take precautions
Stay
here.
away from windows and things like
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. So that's the main difference. The watch, like you said, Brad, you're watching. The warning means take action.
And it
Get
doesn't
inside.
mean go out and look for a tornado.
Oh no.
I mean,
Although some people do make that mistake.
yeah, I mean, of course, there are storm chasers out there that are very well qualified and prepared to do things like that. But of course, you get the videos of a lot of folks.
Yeah.
You'll see them, but you're putting yourself, you may be putting your family, at risk. Don't take a chance of, because again, these things are very. Of course, we have an idea where the tornado could be going, but they're not. They're still a little bit. What's the word I'm
hmm
thinking of?
Um.
Erratic, I guess, in their movement.
Yes.
We have a
Absolutely.
general idea when there's a warning and where it's probably going to go, but
hmm
these things can change, very quickly.
Yeah. I mean, tornadoes can be of different sizes. They can be,
Hmm.
up to a couple yards across to up to over a mile and a half across. In
Right.
some of the
Some of the big
largest
ones, yeah.
cases.
And
Now.
one other thing, a lot of folks, they'll see a tornado warning and then it'll expire or nothing will happen, but yet the storm itself is usually still intact. And this is the old thing you hear about, oh well, it skips over this house or it may skip over this neighborhood. That
hmm
is true, because what happens is tornadoes, or at least
hmm
tornadic supercells and thunderstorms, do go through cycles. So yeah, it may produce a
hmm
tornado for a mile and then nothing for a couple of miles and reproduce another tornado, 5-6 miles up the road, because it's the way the atmosphere works.
Absolutely. And when Brad said supercells, I don't know if people might have been a little bit confused by that term, but basically a supercell is a thunderstorm that's got rotation with it, and that's what produces tornadoes. But my question to you, Brad, is: have
Hmm.
you ever seen a tornado?
No, and I don't want to sound like I want to get myself into trouble, because I just said don't ever go look for a tornado. But
Yeah, yeah.
I've only seen a funnel cloud, and
Okay.
I've seen a water spout, but this is
Yeah.
when I lived down south, but it was pretty far out in the distance. I mean, it was probably 5, 6, 7 miles offshore. But
hmm
personally, though, I've never actually seen one on land.
Yeah. No, I haven't seen one either. I know I sound like depressed about it. I really shouldn't,
Again, yeah, this is what we talk.
because
I know, but this is what we do, and it's just like anyone else that gets excited,
yeah.
maybe for their profession.
So yeah, I mean, I the most that I've seen is a wall cloud, which
Okay.
is kind of the precursor to a tornado for everybody out there. The wall cloud was rotating, so I saw that, but I just didn't see any actual
Yeah.
tornado come out of the storm. Um, so yeah, I mean, I haven't directly seen a tornado either. I mean, that doesn't mean they're not real.
No, I know. Although we
But
know they're real. I mean, you see plenty of footage, in the
yeah,
spring and early summer out in the Midwest, and
yeah,
that's where you get these real large damaging tornadoes. Not to say
right,
we can't get a damaging tornado here in the Northeast, but they don't even
yeah,
come close to as big as the ones out in the Midwest.
right.
Get to the strength of 200 miles per hour, and they can,
hmm
we've talked about this. It can, wipe things off of foundations and basically, take out a neighborhood.
Right.
Versus where in the Northeast, we get some smaller tornadoes. Again, can do damage, but it's usually very localized. And
hmm
and the ones here in the Northeast are only on the ground for, usually we measure them in mile or yards and half miles, versus where in the Midwest they're on the ground for,
Yeah.
it could go and be on the ground for 100 miles.
Sure. I mean, it could. And you get those long track tornadoes, and the reason is basically in the Midwest, in Tornado Alley, they have the right ingredients
Right.
to make these large storms to produce long track tornadoes. In the Northeast, we're usually missing an ingredient or two. It's like
Hmm.
it's like we forgot the sugar or something.
Yeah, well, that's
Making some
funny to bring that
cookies.
up. No, I try to explain that to some folks, and the atmosphere and weather, it is like almost like you're cooking in the kitchen. I mean, if you're
hmm
trying to, have let's take a loaf of bread. If you're trying to make the perfect loaf of bread, you need
Mhm.
all the ingredients for it to taste the way you want it to. But same thing in the atmosphere and weather. If you don't have all the ingredients, you're not going to get exactly what you're, I guess, looking for or
Mhm.
forecasting. Same thing happens in the winter. You need all the ingredients for a good winter storm and a nor'easter. If you're missing the cold or you're missing the moisture or you're
Mhm.
missing, something, you don't get it. So the atmosphere to produce like the extreme tornadoes and things like that, of course, you need all the ingredients there, and the Northeast sometimes lacks that. Which, again, I'm not complaining about because I don't really want to have to
No.
worry about an EF5 tornado, coming through New Jersey or Pennsylvania and things like that.
Yeah, no, we do not need that. But Brad, we talked about the lightning, we've talked about the wind, talked about the hail, and even the tornadoes, these storms. But there's one more issue with severe weather that we can have here in the Northeast that's a problem, and that comes to flooding.
Yeah.
Um, flash flooding is can be a big concern with thunderstorms in the Northeast. And I don't know about you, Brad, but have you ever had any type of basement flooding with this type of situation?
Um, Not that I can really recall, but I mean,
Hmm.
maybe just enough to where it gets seeps inside. But yeah, I've
Yeah.
had I've had neighbors and I've had friends. They have crawl spaces, especially here where I live in the
Hmm.
Poconos. And if there's something that can't drain right, or if you get a lot of rain within a half hour, 45 minute
Right.
time frame, you could easily you flood your basement or your crawl space and things like that. And that's kind of what we're talking about. And not only that, but you get the roadway flooding sometimes with thunderstorms.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And that roadway flooding can be a real issue, I mean, especially and when you get to the fall months when the leaves are falling off, it clogs drains.
Hmm.
That can create a real problem in poor drainage areas. That's why it's good, to get forecasts and things like that about the flooding. That way you can go out ahead of time. You can or clients can clean out those drains, make sure things are ready for all that heavy rain that may happen. But I gotta say too, Brad, with the basement flooding, I haven't had too much. Like you said, some seeping through the walls, things like that. But I gotta say, my neighbor here had a real bad situation earlier,
Mm.
where his yard is sloped in such a way where all the water kind of
Oh
was
yeah.
shoved against his house, and he got a lot of water in his basement, and he had to pump it out, all that stuff. So it can be a difficult situation, for sure. The most I get around my house is just there's a one area that fills up. It looks like a pond in the back of my yard, but that's just because there's a berm there that's designed to stop
I was gonna
the
say
water.
there is, there are places even in the Northeast where they have what they call the retention ponds, I guess. So
Hmm.
they do kind of collect the water if it does come
Attention
down
pond.
too fast like that. But the flash flooding aspect, it's nothing to mess with. The old adage, "Turn around, don't drown." It doesn't take a lot of water to move a car, and especially if you have a lot of cars on a
Hmm.
busy highway and the drainage isn't working, or the rain's coming down so fast that it's overcoming, the amount of rain that could or water that it can
Right.
actually drain off. So that's where you get into these big issues. Take like Newark's a hot spot for flash flooding
Hmm.
only because it's so urban. There's
Yeah.
nothing to really soak up the water, and that's where we get into some of those issues. And it doesn't take a lot. Even if you get like an inch of rain within like a half hour, 45-minute time frame, it can flood pretty quickly in some of those urban areas.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like Brad said, it doesn't take much water to start knocking you off your feet. That's fast moving, or even move cars. And I think it's a foot of water can move a car if it's moving swiftly enough.
Yep.
And if you think about if you're ever at the beach or something, how that wave kind of pulls on you as it's going back to sea. That's
The
that's
undertow,
what we're
yeah.
talking about. That little amount of water is certainly very strong, and
Yeah,
people kind of
and
underestimate that a little bit.
yeah, I was gonna say,
And
and think about it too. If you've been to the beach, and a lot of folks in the Northeast have been there, even if they always say never turn your back to the ocean, but I've done it before. I'm sure a lot of folks have, and
yeah.
you're having fun with everyone, friends, family, and you maybe yelling to someone back on, the shore, which is probably only a couple of feet away. But sometimes you get a rogue wave that's hip high. It
And
knocks you
that
down quick.
hurts.
You're not expecting. It hurts. Not only does it hurt, it knocks you down. I mean, I don't care if you're 250, 300 pounds or something like that. It can the weight amount of water that can
Hmm.
it doesn't take a lot to knock you down. So think about that rushing water,
Yeah.
and a lot more of it on cars and things like that. So flash flooding is a big issue when it comes
Yeah.
to thunderstorms.
Yeah, and speaking of the beach and the coast and stuff, I mean, there's also coastal flooding.
Hmm.
There's also large scale flooding that where rivers start flooding. But we can talk more about that in a different podcast where we talk about maybe tropical systems and
Yeah,
how the
yeah.
effect
I
of
mean,
tropical systems. It's pretty much I think it's the number one killer out of a
yeah, and
tropical
out
system.
of
It's
all
not just
weather and
the
things like
wind.
that.
Everybody thinks of the wind, but really it's the water that
It's the
becomes an
storm
issue.
surge, and then on top of
Hmm.
that, the inland flooding. But like you said, we'll talk more about that another time. But one thing that does come to mind though is not too long ago we had what was it, Hurricane Harvey.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
mean, I think it was a pretty substantial hurricane at one point where, yeah,
Well,
it
yeah,
did
I
come
think it was like
ashore.
category 4. I think
It
it got
might
to
have been at one
130 miles
point.
an hour.
Yeah,
130,
and
I believe.
but nobody remembers now anymore
Mhm,
about the wind damage or the storm surge because it basically it became stationary. It parked itself
yeah,
over southeast Texas, around the Houston
parked in
area.
Houston.
Yeah, and it just rained itself out for a couple of days, and
Mhm.
there were some areas 50, even 60 inches of rain.
I mean,
I
that's
mean,
just amazing.
that's unheard of.
You think about that, that's the amount of rain that people that's more than the amount of rain that some
Yeah.
areas get in a year,
Yeah, it
worth
was it
of
was
time.
sad what happened down there, but yeah, like I said, we'll talk about that's a whole nother podcast topic when we get into tropics, and we'll probably say that as we get closer to hurricane season. But one last thing, Mike, we do want to talk about here is weather. It's not really severe weather per se that's really going to impact you, on a daily
Mhm.
basis that we have to worry about, but the heat. We can never just say
Yeah.
heat doesn't cause an issue because it does.
Oh, it's a huge issue. I mean, you know, especially when you get these heat waves in the summer where you're got temperatures in the 90s, it's feeling like 100 degrees, that sort of thing. Actually, funny story. You talked about retention ponds earlier. That reminded me about when I was doing some landscaping and I had to cut down a retention pond. So I don't know if anybody out there has done this before, but cutting down high weeds in a retention pond
Ugh.
is about the hardest thing you can do in the middle of summer
Oh, yeah, that's gotta
because
be.
you're worried about getting things like poison and things like that too, so you're wearing a lot of clothes.
Ugh.
And I was doing this the one time in the summer, and I was just drenched in sweat, trying to get this all these weeds down. And then this neighbor comes over to me where I was cutting it down and said, would you like a beer or something? And here I'm like 17 or something. I'm not, I don't even think I was 21 at all. Um,
Ah,
but I was like, I would take it, but
that's not the
I
best
was
thing to drink when you're yeah, anyway.
exactly, I don't want to be drinking. I was like, listen, I'm going to pass on the beer, because man, I mean, you know how it is. If you've been sweating all day, you drinking beer is not the thing you're looking for.
Yeah,
You got to look for water. You're looking
yeah.
for water or maybe a sports drink or something like that. Um, and that brings up about sweating, and that's the way our body tries to cool itself, right, Brad?
Yeah, and that brings into the topic of the heat index and things
Mhm.
like that, and how the body reacts to the heat and humidity. And everyone hears about the heat index in the middle of summer, and
Mhm.
basically it's almost, I know, to easiest way to tell everyone is it's probably the opposite of the wind chill, in the winter time where it's, this is what it feels like outside. But it's probably the wind chill itself, isn't
Mhm.
gonna dehydrate you and cause some major issues. You basically just go put on another layer or two, as long as you're not outside in it too long. But the heat index is something that you have to really account for if you're going to be outside for a long time, because it's a
Mhm.
combination of the dew point and the temperature. And basically, the dew point is just using temperature to tell you how much water or how much moisture is in the atmosphere. So you have a
Yeah.
90-degree day with a dew point near 70, that
Mhm.
heat index is going to be close to 105. And that's where you get into trouble if you're outside, and you can dehydrate yourself rather quickly. And like Mike said, you got to get hydrated. You got to get the sports drinks. You got to get
Mhm.
the water, stay away from the alcohol. And don't forget, check on the elderly, check on the pets. They all need water. Make sure everyone is readily, hydrated too,
Mhm.
because these things, is not too fast where you can have heat exhaustion. And
Right.
you don't even realize it. A lot of folks think, oh, I'm just thirsty, I'm just tired, but it can zap you pretty quick.
Yeah, absolutely. And basically, once you get heat exhaustion, your body's just not able to cool itself down
Right.
good enough. So, and like I said, it does that through sweat, and that's why it feels hot, because if there's a lot of moisture in the air, the sweat can't evaporate off your skin and cool your body down as
Right.
easily. So that's just why it feels so hot. It's not that the temperature changes; it's still 90 degrees.
Right.
But it's just how your body feels, the apparent temperature. So, man, I'm glad we'll eventually be heading into fall here and get rid of some of this heat and humidity.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
um,
with you there.
but
Yeah,
uh,
imagine other places across the country down
mhm,
south that have to deal with it. And I've lived down south before, and
yep,
it's just unrelenting. June, July, August, September. I mean, it really isn't. I mean, where I lived in South Carolina, it didn't really
mhm,
break the heat until probably, I don't know, Halloween.
right,
And then you look at other parts of the world that live around the equator. So yeah,
mhm.
heat is a big issue, that's for sure, and heat exhaustion and things like that. But I think
Well, I
that's
think.
about it today, Mike. I think we've
Mhm.
covered our severe weather topic here pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. We covered it all here. We'll talk about more summer severe weather, as far as, like we said, hurricanes in a different podcast for sure, because that's a topic onto itself, and we'll certainly have more to talk about. But Brad, I think let's just take it away here
Yeah. Well,
and
don't forget we're on social media. A lot of folks can
oh,
always
absolutely.
revisit. You can check us out on Twitter and
Hmm.
Facebook. Our website, weatherworksinc.com. We're on
Hmm.
Instagram as well. So we're out there, and we're hoping that you can continue to follow us here on our podcast. And once again, we're WeatherWorks, and you're in the Weather Lounge, and we will see you here next time.